Let's begin by taking 3 deep breaths. Relaxing with each out breath. Scanning our bodies and releasing any points of tension that we find. Finding a posture of stillness, balance, and vigilance in which we can relax completely. Leaving our spine straight, our eyelids relaxed, the tongue behind the upper teeth touching the palate. Let your breath become natural without controlling it, allowing your body to breathe when it needs it. Now set your motivation for this practice and make it as meaningful as possible. Now let's spend a few minutes practicing Shamatha or Shine, calm abiding meditation. Choosing our object and keeping our attention single-pointedly on it without distraction, without grasping, fully present. If you find your mind wandering, gently bring it back to the object. Now remember, compassion is the wish for sentient beings, including yourself, to be free from suffering and its causes. Remember a time when your mind was filled with fear and aggression, with dissatisfaction, craving. Saturated with anger or suffering. Or when it was clouded with deep ignorance and confusion, so that you could not think clearly or use your wisdom. Now visualize those mental afflictions and sufferings as a dark smoke around your body. And with the wish, may I be free from suffering and its causes. Imagine bringing all that smoke with the in-breath into a sphere of white light in the center of your chest and dissolving it completely there without a trace. As you breathe in this dark smoke, wish for yourself, may I be free of anger, may I be free of fear, may I be free of attachment, of ignorance and suffering. Imagine that smoke becoming less and less with each in-breath. As you do this, imagine feeling liberated, cleaned, relieved. Now imagine all that dark smoke has dissolved completely. Feel your body and mind lighter, free, peaceful. Now visualize in front of you your loved ones, your friends, your relatives. Think of their problems, their sufferings, and the mental afflictions they have to deal with day by day. Visualize this as dark smoke around their bodies and generate the wish. May you, like myself, be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Now you can choose either visualizing that you bring that smoke into that window at your heart chakra. Or if this feels scary or too intense, you can visualize with the out breath, sending light from this sphere in the center of your chest, out, reaching each one of these beings and dissolving completely the dark smoke around them, removing it, dissolving it, pushing it away. Either way, as you do this, think, may you be free of these mental afflictions. May you be free of suffering. May you be free of illness, problems, mental afflictions. And may you be free from the causes of suffering. Now imagine all that smoke being completely gone and your loved ones feeling free, happy, peaceful, liberated. And now bring to mind a group of strangers. Visualize them in front of you. And repeat the process. Try to generate empathy, connection with them, thinking about their problems, the sufferings they might have, the difficulties arising from mental afflictions. Remember, they are not different than us. They want the same things. They want to stop suffering and they want to be happy. So wish them from your heart. May you be free from obstacles, from problems, sufferings, illnesses. May you be free from mental afflictions and the causes of suffering. imagine dissolving the dark smoke around their bodies. You can include animals in your visualization too. Another form of sentient beings if you want. Now imagine them being completely free of that smoke, peaceful and happy. And now visualize all those people that you consider hostile, difficult, problematic, people or beings you don't like. Those who don't like you or you have a problem with, or even consider enemies. And think they are not different than me. Everything they do is because they think those actions will bring them happiness. They too try to escape from suffering, from unpleasant experiences. But due to ignorance, they cultivate the causes of their own suffering and the suffering of others. So wish them, may you be free of your mental afflictions, of anger, of confusion, attachment, pride, jealousy, any mental afflictions you perceive on them. May you be free. Visualize dissipating these mental afflictions that manifest as dark smoke around them. May you be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. Now visualize them free of these mental afflictions, finding peace, having wisdom, developing the qualities of the heart. And say goodbye to them as you see them dissolve in light. Come to rest in the present. Just rest. Let's finish dedicating this practice so that we can continue cultivating compassion in our hearts, that we stop creating the causes of suffering, that we be free of obstacles, illness, problems, difficult experiences, that we can help others be free as well from this. And due to this merit, may we sow the seeds for liberation and enlightenment. And with great compassion, being able to help countless sentient beings. Let's stretch a little bit, move. This meditation can be a little bit difficult at the beginning to feel that compassion or feel connected with other beings, especially with those we consider hostile or difficult. So it might feel like you're faking it, but you're training your mind. We're all training by doing this meditation. The visualization is helping us connect with the heart, and eventually by wishing this thought, may you be free, we will break those barriers we've built to protect our heart and open to connect with each and every sentient being to the point that we really can't bear that suffering in any sentient being, no matter who. And we want to do something about it. We want to not just generate aspirations, but we want to put compassion in action and actually be able to do something, right? But slowly we start training, we start opening, we start connecting with others. So don't worry if at the beginning it's difficult. Now, it might also be difficult to use visualizations, imagination, because we are used to use that power of the mind of visualizing and imagining to get lost in daydreaming, in fantasy. And usually those fantasies and daydreaming have to do with our attachments, with our angers or aversions. But now, instead of doing that, we're using that power of the mind to generate a visualization and use that visualization to cultivate a positive, constructive mental state that will help us be free. Also, while doing the shamatha practice, we are bringing our attention back, not letting it wander with those distractions and daydreaming. So by doing that, we're able to focus more and more on that visualization, on those wishes, so that we give them more power due to being concentrated. But once you start feeling great compassion and connecting, you can also just drop the visualization and rest in that state of compassion And then when it starts dissolving or you start getting distracted, you bring to mind again the images of the people, the aspiration, the visualization of sending light and dissolving the dark smoke, or bringing it in and dissolving it into the heart chakra. And by doing that, again, connecting with that deep compassion that is already present in our deepest level of mind, in our primordial consciousness or Buddha nature, but that we have it obscured by the clouds or veils of ignorance and mental afflictions. So by starting by wishing ourselves to be free from those, then we're also creating the causes to be more open, more clear, more wise, and be able to impact others as well. So we start with us, we follow with the loved ones or friends, because it's easy. If you think of a relative or a friend and you think they have sufferings, they have problems, immediately you want them to be free from this. And then we go to the group of strangers because they are the next less difficult group. So you can start dissolving the indifference and connecting. And then when you are out in the world and you perceive strangers, then you don't label them as strangers. You care for them, and you put attention, and you see how they might be suffering, and before you didn't even notice because you were too distracted in your own thoughts. And then finally you bring to mind the enemies or the difficult group of people or beings. It can be a dog or an animal that you have aversion to. So you bring them to mind and you start cultivating this compassion. So it's gradually going from the easiest to the most difficult, right? But then you can do a whole session on one group, or you can do a whole session with one particular person that you have a problem or that you love very much and you know they have a problem. So you can do that too. Or you can just do a whole session for yourself, and that's also very beneficial. Okay? So compassion is very important, same as loving kindness, because they are direct antidotes to our mental afflictions, and really we need both the loving kindness, compassion as two sides of the same coin. Like we want them to be free from suffering and to have happiness and the causes of happiness. So we need on one hand to cultivate that very strongly, and on the other hand the wisdom that realizes emptiness. So these are the two wings we need to find liberation. If we just cultivate one or the other, we are trapped. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that compassion without wisdom is bondage, and wisdom without compassion is bondage too. So we see wonderful beings in the history of humanity that were extremely compassionate, and they dedicated their lives to alleviate the suffering of others. Yet they never received teachings on emptiness. They thought the suffering was really out there, intrinsically from its own side, that this was a reality and that it was never going to end. So they suffered deeply because no matter how much they do or they did, they could never alleviate all that suffering, and it seemed so real that sometimes they burn out. We see people working in communities that are affected by a lot of suffering, and they're giving all their energy, but they end up drained and burn out, or really depressed with a mental imbalance because of the amount of suffering they're witnessing, right? And then we have beings that have dedicated their lives to the cultivation of observing their minds, of the inquiry, the philosophical inquiry, the investigation of reality. They are extremely intelligent, and they can go to that wisdom of emptiness, but they are dissociated from all the other beings. They don't connect with compassion. They're just interested in their own liberation, in their own understanding of reality. It can be addictive to want to understand more and forget about those practices for the heart. Those are for the weak or the New Age people, right? And they go to an extreme that is not gonna bring them to liberation, right? Because when you go in that direction of realizing emptiness in balance with the compassion, you realize that you're not separated or different from anybody else, and that your happiness is totally interdependent with the happiness of others. So if you are not coming to that realization, you're going in the wrong direction, right? That's why we need both, to balance and to be free. And you can see someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, how he has those two in such good balance, because the Tibetan people have suffered extreme things, like they were in concentration camps. They had to leave their, not leave, they were taken from their house and families, or their families were killed, like extreme suffering. And they, like thousands of people come to His Holiness the Dalai Lama to ask for advice, to ask for help, and he does everything he can to help, right? But yet, he never loses that sense of lightness and cheerful state of being, because he knows, ultimately, that everything is empty, right? And then he gives these amazing teachings on wisdom and understanding of reality and how to meditate on emptiness, but he never says, I know so much, I'm so smart, and you see him not being compassionate. He always have this open heart to include all beings, right? So we can, we have examples still in our modern world of these great beings, and that's fantastic, right? Due to the compassion of the Buddhas, they decide to come and manifest as sentient beings to help us, to show us that it's possible. So if we didn't have those examples, it would make it more difficult, because we don't have a reference to see and say, well, it's possible, right, to achieve those levels of great compassion. And I was researching a little bit about Kamtrul Rinpoche, the teacher we are going to visit. And it's interesting because I didn't know, but I found that there are two incarnations of Kamtrul Rinpoche, of the previous one.
Same person, two incarnations?
Yeah. So when a practitioner becomes a Buddha, right, your mind is completely awake and free. And Buddhas can manifest what we talked about, pure lands, places where are like a realm of existence where you can take rebirth and have access to teachings, and they create these environments for people to, not people, sentient beings, to keep practicing and achieve Buddhahood due to their great compassion. They can also manifest in our realm, our world, in multiple bodies, which are called emanations. And these emanations, we could say they are bodhisattvas, but they know that their ultimate level of reality is Buddha mind. They are the Buddha, right? So, for example, the Dalai Lama the body we see is called the Nirmanakaya. And then we have the Sambhogakaya, which is that he is the Buddha of compassion manifesting as the Dalai Lama, right? And ultimately is the Dharmakaya, the Buddha mind. So a Buddha has these three bodies or kayas, and they can emanate in different bodies. But this might be very difficult for us to understand. So a good example is to think about a dream. You might be dreaming, and in the dream you say, I'm gonna be here, but I want to be simultaneously in the other side of the world, right? And could you think that it's possible in your dream to appear in two bodies? Yes, because in the dream so many things can happen. You can be without a body. We have had, many of us, that experience of not having a body, or to have a completely different body. You can transform your body. You can transform into a butterfly, into a table. You can do anything in a dream, right? Anything can happen, especially if you're lucid. You can do a lot of things. So even in the practice of dream yoga, there is different levels of practice and dreams. So there are the dreams where you are only manifesting the appearances of your own mind within that mental space. So we would say it's not real in this waking reality, right? But as advanced practitioners, you could have other kinds of dreams in which you can leave your body you're dreaming, you leave your body in the bed sleeping, and it looks like a dream, but you are actually emanating a dream body and going to other part of the world, and you witness something. Then the next day you say, oh, I saw you through your window and you were having this for dinner. And so you can prove that this was happening in the other side of the world because you actually separated your body, your subtle body, from the physical body, and were able to go and visit those people or those beings. So now it's like the dream state is kind of happening at the same time as the waking state, right? But of course, sometimes we can have that experience as being very beginners in the practice. But it's not the same kind of emanation of the body, because you're only dreaming it. You're dreaming that you separate from your body, that you look your body from the top of the room, and that you go out the window and go explore and see other people that you know, but you are only dreaming it. It's not happening with this waking reality. In order to do that, you need some training. Or it can happen if you have like a lot of mental imprints from past lives and you were practicing for several lives, you were practicing dream yoga. Well, now in this life, even if you don't have any training, you might start having those experiences, right? Because of the momentum of the imprints you have cultivated in the past. So a Buddha can manifest in different bodies. So we have in the history of Tibet a lot of these cases of teachers passing away and then manifesting in 2 or 3 bodies or even 4. Like Dujong Limpa had a manifestation, one body incarnated, it was a manifestation of his body. Another was the manifestation of his speech, and the other one was a manifestation of his mind. So that can happen. Gyatro Rinpoche said to meet, I think there were 4 incarnations at that time, and he met 3 out of 4 and received teachings from the 3 of them. And now we had Dujong Rinpoche, his successor. He had an incarnation in Bhutan and one that was Tibetan, but just recently passed away. I think now there's only the one in Bhutan. And we have a lot of examples. Now, there's some controversial ones, like Karmapa. There are 2 Karmapas, and there was a big controversy because some said, no, it's this one. No, this is the real one. So that can happen too, right? That they don't know. But many times these realized practitioners or lamas or bodhisattvas, they give clear instructions about where they are going to be born. They give the name of the parents or the village so that they can be found faster and bring back to the monastery, right? So Kamtrul Rinpoche was one of these cases, and there are 2, one in Bhutan and the one here in Tashiyong. And so he is, for what I research and what Tsogni Rinpoche, one of my teachers, said, because his previous incarnation was the teacher of Tsogni Rinpoche, and Tsogni Rinpoche says that he was with this teacher, the new one, the young one, and that he was pretty impressed because he was all the time dwelling in that Buddha mind. No matter if he was speaking or doing or acting, he was all the time. And that he has an amazing realization of Mahamudra. So the way to be there, like if we have the chance to be with him, is to kind of settle your mind, practice some shamatha, and just be very present. And if you can't, go to rest in awareness of awareness and listen attentively to whatever he says or whatever he does, because when a realized being acts, moves, speaks, even if it seems ordinary, everything is coming from that Buddha mind. So if you have openness in that moment and your mind is fully present, you can receive a lot of blessings from that level of consciousness, which is not separated from yours, your own Buddha nature. That's why there can be that connection or that transference mind to mind, or that those flow of blessings flowing from their mind to yours, right? So we can do this if we are there. And Yeah, and then Bridget, she confirmed that he speaks English, so that's a good thing. She knows him. So uh, maybe we'll have chance to ask questions or not, but anyways, I wanted you to know so that you go with that openness, right? And also I wanted to tell you there's other forms in which these Buddhas manifest, and they are just spontaneous manifestations. So some of them are practitioners that, or appear to be like practitioners that have lived a whole life of training, then they pass away, then they take rebirth. Ideally, they look for a place that is familiar or there's practice or near their monasteries, and they very soon are incorporated in their centers or monastery and start teaching their students and following with that work they did in previous lives. But they receive a special kind of training, they have the best teachers, kind of reminding them everything they already know. So they memorize the texts very fast, and they receive all the empowerments of the lineage, and they very soon they start teaching very young, and they continue this process life after life after life, right? But then there is other manifestations. They just, it's like the Buddha mind is just is born as a human or appears as a human, but is not found or recognized at the beginning. So they live like a normal life, yet they're impacting everybody around them. So this was a case of Kandrola. She was a Tibetan from a poor family, and she didn't have any education. But when she would go into the temples, she would enter into like a kind of trance and start feeling a lot of devotion and singing or praying. And so the Chinese would see her and they would say, she's crazy. So they would just kick her out, but at the same time kind of ignoring her because everybody in the town thought she was a bit crazy, right? But in one of these occasions that she was having a deep manifestation of devotion and singing and just this weird behavior, there was a beggar that saw her. And in Tibet there's a lot of stories of hidden yogis, that they are beggars, they dress all like with whatever dirty things they have. They don't have possessions. They're wandering yogis, and nobody knows they are realized masters, right, or yogis or practitioners, like the case of Patrul Rinpoche, who was all his life like a beggar, and there's amazing stories about him. But yet, this yogi, this sees her. Of course, when they have a deep realization, they can see beyond the appearances. So he comes to her and gives her some money and said, go to India, find the Dalai Lama, go to Dharamsala, and go see His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And she's like, but how am I going to get there? It's so far. Well, he insisted, and she thought she should follow the advice. So she goes with a caravan of people, because at that time they were walking to come to India. So they are walking and walking, but in the way, like all these Tibetans start interacting with her and feeling that she's something special, right? And start naturally having devotion for her and kind of making prostrations to her and asking for blessings. And then they reach the Mount Kailash and do some circumambulations. And then they finally come to India, and they have to be separated. And she has to continue her way, right? So first they come to Nepal, and she comes to Bodha in Nepal, but at this point she's very sick, she's feeling very ill, and the people in the community where she was staying, they didn't want to touch her. So they had her kind of pushed into a courtyard or somewhere where she was kind of isolated from contact, like now we do with the COVID patients. And they would pinch her with a stick because they didn't want to come close to her. But she was so ill, she had fever, like all this kind of purification taking place, right? And she was almost dying. And then one of the persons that was around there was feeling a kind of compassion, right? So he came close to her and said, "How can I help you?" And you know, in Tibetan medicine, the Tibetan doctors diagnose with the urine. So they also take your pulse, but one of the traditional ways is that they do some test with the urine. So she said, "Take my urine, go to the stupa in Bodha." I think it was in Bodha or Swayambhu. I think Bodha. But he said, take my urine to the stupa and give it to the first person you find there. I said, okay. So he takes this urine, comes to the stupa, he finds a person and he gives him this. And he said, "I've been told to give it to you." And this person happened to be a Tibetan doctor. So he sees the urine, he says, "Who is this from?" So he's taken to see her, and he gives her treatment and heals her. So she heals and then continues her trip to come here to Dharamsala. So she comes and she tries to go into the teachings. You know, here in the temple of the Dalai Lama, there's big audience of people. Lots of people come to those teachings. So she comes, and the moment she sees His Holiness the Dalai Lama, she sees him in his Sambhogakaya form as a Avalokiteshvara with 1,000 arms, all white. You know the image of Chandrasekhar, 1,000 arms, right? That image that represents all the hands of compassion extending to all sentient beings. But she sees him like that, and she faints. So when she wakes up, she says, "Well, impossible to come close to him. He's so far, right?" But she tries again. She comes to the teachings, and His Holiness is there giving the teachings, and she enters into this kind of trance, stands up, and starts singing some devotional prayers or something. And the guards there, they think she's crazy, and they take her out of the temple. And then she tries again, but again they push her out. So this happens several times, and she is very sad, very, very sad that she can't come close to His Holiness, and says, "Maybe I should just go back to Tibet. Maybe it was not a good idea to come." But by this time, she had made some friends in the community around there, and they said, "No, don't give up, don't get discouraged. Come, we're going to introduce you to a Lama here, and maybe he can do something to bring you closer." So they bring her, and he helps her come to the teachings, and that she can, because I don't know, but he managed to make it that she can stay in the teachings, and they let her, right? So now she's closer to the Dalai Lama, and when she starts doing this singing and praying, the Dalai Lama sees her and says, "Bring her to my temple." And then he sends to bring all this council of highly realized lamas. They come and they do some divinations and some meditations, and they found out that she is a Dakini, an emanated manifestation of the Buddha. She's a realized being manifesting. And that this trance she enters is because she's canalizing the oracle of she's the oracle canalizing the main protector of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan people. So they have a special kind of ritual that I won't go in detail for the oracles. You can see the movie Oracle. It's a documentary where she actually is featured in that documentary. But when they do this ceremony, she starts talking with the Dalai Lama and telling advice about what's going to happen, or how the Tibetan people should proceed with certain decisions. But then she kind of faints and forgets. She doesn't remember that she was in that trance. So there's some oracles that can do that, and they're not realized beings. They're just kind of like mediums or like channels. But she is also a realized Dakini, or manifestation of primordial consciousness. And so Lama Zopa Rinpoche and other great teachers start coming to visit her, and they say, yeah, she's a realized being, and they praying to her, asking for blessings. But she's so humble and so sweet that she's very shy. She doesn't want to give them blessings. So Lama Zopa grabs her hand and then slowly starts moving and putting her hand in his head so he can get the blessing, because she doesn't want to get the blessing, right? And so now she's been teaching for the FPMT for some years now. But her teaching doesn't come from years of philosophical study. It comes from the spontaneous knowing, because she is a realized being that is talking from experience, directly from the experience, even though she's not talking in philosophical terms or anything. She's talking from her own experience. So, due to compassion, Buddha can manifest like that in order to help beings that they might not get it in the other way, in the philosophical training, but a more direct teaching might be what they need. So the Buddha manifests out of compassion in that way. So she's amazing. I had the opportunity to meet her. She was living in the temple of the Dalai Lama. They gave her a little house. I think she's not there anymore because she has now many projects going on, and traveling and teaching. But yeah, just being there with her was very special, because these beings, they are kind of emanating that great compassion, So if you have an opportunity like that, to go to the temple of the Dalai Lama, to be receiving his teachings, even if you don't understand the teachings, because they are very complicated philosophical texts, and then he teaches in Tibetan, and then the translator translates to English, and then you have to listen with the radio. It's like sometimes it's not easy to get what he is teaching. But you can be just there with your mind settled and be in his presence and connecting from the heart, And this teacher we're going to be visiting, Kamchu Rinpoche, same. I mean, if he chooses to manifest again and again and again, life after life, and now in two bodies, is only out of compassion, a great compassion for all beings, because they made the vow again and again for lives and lives to achieve enlightenment and benefit all sentient beings. So their work continues, even though they are enlightened, and in theory they don't have to work or do anything else. Due to the great compassion they cultivated for lives and lives and lives, they keep manifesting in different ways to meet with different kinds of people and teach us how to be free. Okay? So, do you have any questions about compassion? Yes.
Actually, I have a question not about compassion, about
Yeah.
dependent arising.
Yeah.
I read a little bit about that. I have some question. Just like how each phenomenon is not dependent, it's always, it's not independent. Independent, it depends on a lot of causes, and I imagine this huge network of cause, and then like when I try to go back in this network, like logically it seems like somehow this network had to be created by a factor that maybe is independent. So my question is where or how the network of cause and effect happened, and like how it came into and how it manifests. And I saw in the Shantideva dedication one line, for as long as space remains, may I be here. So like it indicates that space is independent on something as well. Like why does space end? So I was just curious if Buddhists have some kind of answer to. I hope my question was clear.
Yeah, well, first of all, we have this idea in many cultures and many societies that there must have be a beginning, like everything must have come from somewhere. But if you reflect a little bit on it, you can't have anything arising from nothing. Let's say we have nothing here, and then suddenly I say, let's appear a pink elephant. Can we do that? It's impossible. If we don't have the causes, we won't have the effect, right? So everything comes from a previous cause, and that cause comes from a previous cause. So from nothingness, nothing can come. And something cannot become nothing, right? We know that matter can be transformed into many other things, right? We could destroy this object, but it won't be fully destroyed. It will transform into something else, right? If we speak in the relative reality of cause and effect, it will transform into something else. Matter is not created, it's not destroyed, it simply transforms. Same with energy, same with consciousness. So, what the Buddha discovered is that there is no beginning and no end. And that's like mind-shocking, because we always want to think in finite terms. We want there to be a beginning and an end. But what the Buddha found after remembering life, after life, previous life, and previous life, and previous life, is that there is no beginning. We've been in samsara, and that's why it's called cyclic existence. We've been in samsara since beginningless time, and if we don't do something, we will be in samsara for endless time. So this is a bit difficult to understand, and we need to reflect on this a lot, and there's a lot of teachings and analysis to come to these conclusions. But that's the conclusion of the Buddha, that there is no beginning and no end. As long as there are causes, there will be effects. And as long as there are effects, they will become the causes for something else, right? So this network continues. Yet ultimately, when we look closely, there is nothing really intrinsically out there. And that's the tricky thing, to find the middle way between these two truths of everything being empty of inherent existence, yet everything being an interdependent arising that continues. So that on one hand. And then in the line of Shantideva's dedication, for as long as space remain, may I too remain to alleviate the sufferings of all beings. Here, space is kind of a poetic way of saying it, but it means that space is always there too, right? Or space is nothing, but it will remain always. So, in Buddhist terms, there is this idea of infinite sentient beings. So there are just so many sentient beings that we cannot think of a number or think that they are finite and that there is an end to the amount of beings there are. So Buddhas will keep working until the last sentient being is enlightened. But at some point, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, there are so many sentient beings that we're still here, and many of us haven't been liberated yet. So as long as there's still some of us, they will keep working to lead us to Buddhahood. We're not alone, fortunately. Those who have awakened, they're not just gone and saying, bye, we're looking from the distance how you suffer and are trapped in samsara, and we're not doing anything. No. That's why the Buddha manifested in this realm 2,500 years ago or more. He manifested to show us the way. His whole life was showing of how to get there. Yet a Buddha cannot walk the path for us. We have to do the work, and this is always mentioned in all the texts and all the teachings. They can point the way. They can be guides. They can show us how to practice. They can do many things for us, but they cannot do the work for us. They cannot walk the path for us. We have to do the practices and liberate ourselves. We have to realize our Buddha nature. So, but that doesn't mean that we don't have help. We have. And it's due to these prayers of compassion of these Buddhas. So by saying, as long as space remains, may I too remain to alleviate the suffering of all beings, is the spirit of the Bodhisattva, is making that vow that no matter how long it takes, we don't have anything better to do, right? So if we become Buddhas, we are already putting the seeds from right now. Or maybe we put them in previous lives, we don't know. But every time we practice, we're putting those seeds so that when we do achieve enlightenment, immediately after we start working for the benefit of all beings, we start doing as much as we can to alleviate that suffering. We are already, as practitioners, doing something. But imagine if you become a Buddha, how much more effective you can be, especially if you can emanate in different realms, in different bodies simultaneously. You can do much more, right? If you're omniscient. The Buddha mind is said to be omniscient. It knows everything. Not omnipotent. It can't solve your problems and liberate you. But they know all this network of causes and conditions, and they know what is best for you and how to guide you. That's why coming to these teachers, realized beings, and ask for their guidance, ask for their teachings, can help us find the path faster and know what to do faster, because they have this omniscient mind that they can know what is best for us and how to help us, right? So many of us might have been practicing in past lives in Tibet or in the Himalayas or in different places. We just don't remember. So we are born in our families, we are conditioned by the environment, we're there trying to figure out life or what to do with our lives, and then suddenly we start feeling a calling, or we go to a course because a friend invited us, or we just make contact with the teachings, a book, somebody gives you a book, something, right? And then those seeds that you cultivated in past lives start ripening. The conditions have come together. So suddenly you start finding a lot of connections you had from previous lives, and that commitment you took to keep practicing until you achieve enlightenment is not lost when you die. It continues on the next life. That's why the refuge is a reliable source of refuge, because it will keep bringing you back to the path, no matter where you are and where you're born, because you've been taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. That refuge, your ultimate refuge, is going to bring you to your path again. And it might be to connect to a teacher you had in the past, or maybe to a new teacher if that person is not nearby. But you will keep finding that path again. And you just have to follow your heart, because sometimes you just feel it, that you want to go to that monastery, and those teachings are very appealing to you, like that path, that way of teaching, that community. And then you go to another one and you don't feel a lot of connection there, you have good interactions, but you feel a strong connection to the Vajrayana path or the Theravada path or the Zen or something, because it's connected to your previous practice. So if you find that and you feel inspired to go to a course or a retreat or to meet a teacher, just do it and see where it leads you, right? Let those seeds ripen. Anything else? Yes?
Yeah. So I have two questions actually. One about compassion. The other one is, you said that when we are in the presence of the realized being, to dwell in awareness of awareness, right? So isn't that kind of not, rather than dwelling on his presence, you're dwelling on your own awareness of that? Is it like a step away, or
You can just do a shamatha practice, or you can just be like trying to be present and mindful, not distracted. Or you can settle your mind in its natural state. You can do a little bit of shamatha and vipashyana, like asking who is the observer, and just resting in that experience of being aware. And just by doing that, like settle your mind as we've been practicing, you create some cooperative conditions so that your mind is more receptive, more present, more open to receive not only the teaching or the answer to a question, but to connect to the Buddha mind of the teacher. So Tenzin Palmo explains this in a nice way. She says, from the side of the teachers, I mean, we're talking about the realized masters, from their side, it's like the door is always open. But our door might be closed. So the blessings cannot come true, right? But they are always open. They're always in that state. So if you open your door, then the blessings of the teacher, the mind-to-mind transmission can happen. So don't worry, don't expect a big experience or something transformative. It's just be there, be present. Let your mind be quiet and settled. And even if you don't have any experience or you don't feel anything, that's, as Mingyur Rinpoche says, the best wow is no wow. So we always want like an amazing experience. We want to see rainbows and Buddhas in each intersection of the rainbow. Like, we want this amazing experience. We want to levitate. Well, those are just experiences, permanent experiences. But even if you don't have an experience, because you can sometimes have an experience, just by being in that state and being present with these teachers, the seed is passing. And that recognition and that Buddha mind will bring you back to your source, to your deepest nature. Slowly, maybe you need to put more water and sun and so more cooperative conditions, keep studying, keep reflecting, keep meditating, doing retreats and practice. But by being in the presence of the teacher, something is activated, or this. The word blessing is difficult sometimes to understand, but it's like energy, like seeds that are planted in your mind, or there's different ways of describing it, but just be open. Just try not to come with all these preconceptions and prejudices and saying, I'm gonna see if he's a Buddha or not. Oh, look how he drinks his cup of tea, he's not a Buddha. If we come with that attitude, we're not gonna have the door open, so nothing's gonna pass through, right? So yeah, Flo? You had another?
Second question, about compassion. Okay, so when you're talking about somebody who's hurt you or antagonized you.
Excuse me?
Sorry, the compassion meditation. So the third one is where you're trying to, take away the suffering of people who hurt you or antagonized you, right? It's kind of, although there is a moment of hesitation or you kind of force yourself to do it, it's far more harder when you imagine going back, because the reaction, there are people who don't think they've hurt you, right? When you, let's say, forgive them, they don't believe that you have the right to forgive them. Or, for instance, another situation where, okay, fine, you say you're forgiving somebody and trying to give them compassion. There's also this feeling that you're being a bigger person, right? There's a little bit of that seeping in. So,
could you just say at the end?
There's a little bit of ego coming in saying that I can be the bigger person here and I'm being magnanimous. And, So, to what extent is it like this is a practice that you sit here and do? How do you take it out there? And there are people who there's also the fear that if you forgive them and let them back into your life, they're going to hurt you again, So you might be opening up, but they might not see it that way. So how do you kind of translate this into the world out there?
Okay, so first, it's true that we can confuse compassion with this sense of pity or superiority or feeling like, poor people, they are suffering so much. I'm so special. I'm going to practice compassion for them. Like going to that trip, right? That is not really compassion. So we have these meanings of compassion in our language. I mean, in the English language, we can understand compassion as having those meanings too. But in Buddhism, what is this karuna, compassion, is this wish that they are free from suffering and the causes, and ourselves too, but from a recognition that we are not superior, or nobody superior than anybody, right? We are equal. We all want to be free from suffering. So if we practice correctly, we will notice if that sense of ego is arising, and then that's why we have the other three immeasurables to support, and the practices of vipashyana, and all the practices to help us balance and not fall into those extremes. Now, when we talk about someone that is hostile or difficult, or we had a problem, forgiving and having that compassion is very important, but that doesn't mean we justify those behaviors. And now we say, well, I forgive you, and come back into my life and keep hurting me, or keep acting in that way, right? So that's not beneficial for the person or for you. So even though we can have compassion for them, this doesn't mean we have to accept those behaviors. See? So sometimes it's beneficial to go and tell them that you understand what they're going through, or if they ask forgiveness, to say, yeah, I forgive you. I don't think it's very beneficial if they have not been aware of their actions to come and say, I forgive you, because they might get very upset and they might start acting with more mental afflictions, right? So, and that can come from that sense of ego or arrogance. And so just forgive them in our heart. But if they come and ask for forgiveness and we say, no, I don't forgive you, then it's because we're holding resentment. So forgiving them, accepting that apology, but still putting limits is important. And you do it out of love and compassion, because you know it's not beneficial to keep maintaining a codependent relationship or something that is harmful for the person and that you can't handle. I mean, a Buddha or a Bodhisattva can handle having a very afflicted beings around them because of the realization of their minds. They can deal with that and help transform those beings. But if we can't handle it, it's okay to put limits and to take care of our mental well-being without being hurtful, just being firm, you know. For example, there's a story of Atisha, this great Indian master that was traveling in Tibet and teaching and kind of reestablishing Buddhism in Tibet. And his cook was a very mean person. Every monastery they arrived, he would go into the kitchen and start giving orders and start treating everybody in the kitchen very bad. And when he would come and serve the food to his master Atisha, he would be very rude and almost throw his plate. And it was a very difficult person. And so every time the people in these monasteries would come to Master Atisha and say, why don't you hire another cook? You let go this one. It's no good for you to be traveling with this person. He's so mean to you, so rude. He doesn't respect you. You're such a great master, and why do you put up with this behavior? And Atisha would say, what? I'm never gonna get rid of my cook. He is my teacher. He is my teacher of patience. As long as I have him with me, I can keep practicing. He is a blessing in my life, you know. So this story is very funny, but he actually thought like that, like realized beings think in that way, right? There's also this common practice with the yogis. They are living in the hermitage or in the caves above the mountains, doing their practice, feeling compassion for all beings, being in their meditation, in nature, seeing these great views. They feel, wow, we must have a great realization. We are doing very well. So they do this practice to test themselves. They go down to the village and they start acting a little bit with a bad behavior. They throw stones or they do bad behavior so that the people in the village react and are angry with them. So then they can put into test how they can deal with this attitude from the villagers, right? And so if they feel reaction towards them, they say, okay, I still need to practice more. So they go back to their caves and keep practicing. So that's something we're going to put into test next week when we go out and go into the streets of India. And we can see how our minds that we've been cultivated, all this calm and peaceful mental state and all this love and compassion, how it manifests when we are out there. Maybe our minds are wandering a lot, or maybe we see people and we see them as strangers. But maybe we start connecting from compassion. We don't know. Let's see what happens and just acknowledge how our mind reacts to the environment and to other people. Of course, we're not going to be mean to them and put it into test because we're not there yet, right? But yeah, there's all these stories and examples.